Good evening. Good evening. This is Moshe Landman with the Maryland Green Party with the Maryland shirt, coming to you from a global perspective. This is the final 20th video of a 20-video series. Of course, we have to go out with Beyonce. Who else? So let's listen to her in the Louvre of Paris. Yeah, there's a lot to that song. But let's get right into tonight's topic, the last topic, the U.S. military, according to the Green Party. All about it. We have a lot to say. So let's get started. Looks like Jay-Z was in that song as well. Of course, they go together. The Green Party calls for a complete transformation of the U.S. military. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, and National Guard into a much smaller defense and peacekeeping force, drastically cutting our federal military budget in order to free up funds to invest in combating climate change and meeting other domestic needs such as education, infrastructure, and housing. What a novel idea. Spend money on real things. We can use technologies such as drones, satellite imaging, digital weapon scanning tools, and elite strike forces to root out terrorist cells, America's main enemy in the 21st century. Doesn't that make sense? So we're going to go into that. Let me finish the full policy, and then we'll get into things. The U.S. spends more on its military than the next 9 countries combined. The military is not an entitlement program with a revenue source like Social Security and Medicare. U.S. defense spending is a major source of our debt and precarious federal fiscal situation. It contributes to injury, death, an attitude of militarism globally, an image of confrontation, and the proliferation of weapons around the world, including weapons of mass destruction. We have so many nuclear weapons in this country. It's scary. Here were the top 10 military budgets of 2021, 2 years ago. U.S. 801 billion, now we're at 858. China 293 billion. India 77 billion. United Kingdom 68. Russia 66 billion. All of our fears of Russia and their nuclear weapons and their power, they spend less than 1/10 of what we spend. And yet, of course, they're not able to defeat Ukraine, but still they scare the entire world because they have the nuclear weapon arsenal. And thousands of them. And even with our treaties that we reduce those nuclear weapons on both sides, they're still a dangerous force led by dangerous people. Let's start by drawing down our military budget to $350 billion per year by 2028 and increasing our Peace Corps funding from $518 million per year to $50 billion annually. The Green Party believes the defense budget has little to do with protecting the country from invasion, but more to do with using dominant military might to advance the needs of multinational corporations worldwide. Tremendous savings would be possible if we adopted a cooperative approach based on mutual security and respect and worldwide improvement in quality of life. And this is not just with Russia, or China, this is with all of African countries, the Middle East, Europe we're okay already, South America. America is running around the world like a policeman, sending guns to Africa and, doing all wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and then trying to be the policeman in the Middle East, and it's just causing a big mess. We're spending trillions of dollars. People coming back with legs cut off. I had a roommate from Morocco who was in the U.S. Army, blown up in Iraq. He had shrapnel all over his body, but he was their translator into Arabic. He was in the inside in Iraq. So it's a terrible thing, war. What's the point? There's other ways to overthrow. Even in Iran, we have different ways that we can take over Iran and change the regime there. It's going to take a lot, but the people are doing it for us. The U.S. should become the world's humanitarian superpower and make friends instead of enemies. It would be a lot cheaper than policing the world on behalf of global corporations. The world would be a much safer place. Let's invest in peace rather than war. Doesn't that make sense? Such a simple idea. The lobbyists for the military-industrial complex successfully secure more money from Congress each year than the Pentagon even asks for. People need to stop voting for people who routinely do their bidding and instead send peace candidates down to Washington to manage the federal budget. Unbelievable. Republicans are slightly more responsible for this, but also the Democrats. So the duopoly powers that are in control they just check whatever the military wants. And it's bankrupting our country to the tune of trillions of dollars of our debt is now due to the budget that we've been spending since Reagan, the time of Reagan. Excessive military spending, if you add it all up, is probably half of our debt, almost half of what we have, which is all of the portion of our debt which is unhealthy, which is greater than 60% debt to GDP ratio, is due to primarily for our military spending. Otherwise, we'd be a healthy country. Now we're double the debt ratio that we should have. We're at 120, almost as much as 139%. Our military spending primarily serves the needs of the military-industrial contractors, not the public, as President Eisenhower warned more than half a century ago. So he told the country, I'm going to open this link, in his farewell address against the establishment of a military-industrial complex. What did he say? Our arms must be might, ready for instant action so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. American makers of plowshares could make swords, but now we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armament industry. Yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implication in the councils of government. We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. That was Dwight D. Eisenhower. Okay. The contractors have bought both parties in Congress with their massive campaign contributions. We must audit and hold the Defense Department accountable for all past U.S. taxpayer contributions, budgets, and finances entrusted to the military-industrial complex over the past 50 years. In 2022, the Defense Department failed its fifth ever audit, unable to account for more than half of its assets. Unbelievable. After 1,600 auditors combed through DOD's $3.5 trillion in liabilities, officials found that the department could not account for about 61% of its assets. So that's almost $1.8 trillion. They have no idea what happened to it. As reported by Pentagon Comptroller Mike McCord, they themselves admit it. Where did all that money go? Where's all the planes they bought, or where did the money go? Maybe it went into the pockets of the contractors. I'm sure it went into all sorts of programs. It went to something. It's not like it disappeared. They just don't know where. It's just an idea. But we know we spent that money, which is a ridiculous amount of money. So it's not that we don't know. It's just that it was too much. So let's go through all of this. With an $858 billion annual budget now, the military spending of the United States is completely out of control. It's taking over a massive portion of our $6 trillion of spending, which is already 1.5, 1.7 over what we should be spending. We should have a cap, just like the state of Maryland, which does not allow us to spend more than we take in, right? A balanced budget amendment. We should have that for the United States. It's very simple. We can't spend more than we get. You know, what's so difficult about that? This way we balance the budget every year. And then for the next 20 years, we have to actually run surpluses. So we have to take in more than we spend in order to balance our budget, to get us back into a healthy place. Otherwise, we're going to continue to run this huge interest. Remember, money is real in the sense that the dollar is a piece of gold because, again, we go back to the gold standard. That's the only real money in the world, gold, silver. Everything else is, printable. We can just print more dollars. But the dollar actually has always been a piece of gold. Since it started, it was a certificate for silver or gold. Luckily, the U.S. still has 8,000 or so metric tons of gold, the most in the world, theoretically. But China, what we all know, probably has more than twice as much as 15 to 30,000 metric tons. They're hiding their true number. That's going to change the whole global economic system. But they're hiding that because they don't want their currency to be overvalued. So they're playing this game. They have over $7 trillion in U.S. Treasury bonds they're holding. So we owe them all this money. They want to keep the value of their yuan down. But what's going to happen now is they're just going to, take those back. They're going to start selling them and slowly revealing the true amount of gold that China has, which is probably, they say now they're 3,500 tons. It's completely false. There's no way they have that little. We see what's coming in there. Once they reveal the fact that they have twice to as much as 4 times as much gold as the United States. That will change the entire global financial system. And if gold does go to its true value, which is probably around $15,000 an ounce, well, we're at 2,000 now, according to Jim Rickards. Everyone should read Jim Rickards, probably the smartest economist in Washington. He advised Federal Reserve folks. Then you'll realize that that's the biggest secret of the global financial system. But what does that have to do with the military? Of course, you have China and Russia with their governmental systems based on communism, in opposition to the United States and the Western world. And, that is a threat to us, but we don't see a direct conflict going to happen between us and them. We need to work on ways to bring peace. Ultimately, we do want to change the governmental systems in those two countries to become more democratic like us. I think that it's going to take real change. We need to have more women in those countries in leadership positions. And those countries themselves are seeing the West. They know how life is better here in the West. They'll change on their own. We just have to, not, keep things calm, do business. Yes, when things get out of hand, like Russia with Ukraine, we do put the sanctions. In China, if they're putting balloons over our country or they're spying on us, I'm not worried about TikTok, to be honest. There's nothing going on there. But other parts of their government are spying. They're spying on their own citizens. It's a terrible situation in certain cities there. They have a famous alcoholic beverage there that is controlled by the party, and it's totally inflated prices. So, we just need to go. We need to visit China as Americans. We need to get involved with their country and the people and show them how to do it correctly. But they're very smart, very hardworking. They're excellent. Most products on Amazon do come from China. Most of our American products now, so there's nothing to be afraid of. They're hardworking. We're buying their products. If we're going to buy them, let's be friends with them. Especially the people, not just the government. And create bonds and actually work with people there. If you're buying from a company, do a video chat, learn about the person in China, their company and their friend, become friends with their family. Great people. We should all be visiting China and starting to build this connection. So many cities, 1.5 trillion people. There's nothing to be afraid of, and also in India as well. But finally, with the military, again, let's cut that budget in half or more. I think we can drop $500 billion from the budget, completely transform our military. It's no longer a force for potentially global conflict everywhere. We don't go into these areas in the Middle East. We don't go into Afghanistan. We're done with that. We just have we have more of a defense force or security within our borders. And then, of course, we do more peacemaking efforts. The globe, instead of the world seeing us as this military might, it sees us as a peacemaker. The Peace Corps, sending people, thousands and thousands of students and others every year to countries around the world. We're dealing with climate change. We're planting trees all over the world. We're teaching people how to do carbon capture, how to bring solar energy for water, bringing clean water, cleaning the waters, cleaning the air, replanting the seaweed, planting the seaweed, cleaning the water, and going fully electric, renewable-based energy. That's how we get a better reputation in the world. That's how we fix all our sins of all the guns we've sent around the world, including Mexico. Most of the gangs and the crime is because America sent guns there for sale. So we sold all these guns around the world. Now we are partially liable for the deaths that occurs because of those guns. So that's something to think about. And that's basically it. So that's the final 20th show of this series, I would say. And our campaign for the Green Party continues next year, every 2 years. Watch us run. Continue to grow the party. It's time for a third party that's actually real and legitimate. Moshe Landman.us. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful evening and a great weekend.